Good evening, everybody. That was a powerful testimony, right? Good evening to everybody who have also joined us online. Thank you for joining us this week as we get our midweek blessing. So I'm going to jump right into it. Last week, we started off by discussing what the importance of the trumpet to the ancient Israelites, the impact that it played in their worship, and we came across several instances in which it was used. One is for a battle cry, which was the theme of last week. The other was in worship. Next one was in the declaration or the proclamation of a new king. But even more important, one that was the cleansing of the sanctuary. So that is the one that we saw being utilized in the reproduce in the revelation, in the introduction, right? So let's jump right to it. The next thing is we compared the 7 seals with the 7 trumpets. What we found was that there were a lot of similarities. For instance, the 4 horsemen was similar to the first 4 trumpets. The 5th and 6th seals were similar to the 5th and 6th trumpet, or the first and second woes. The interlude, which was in chapter 7 for the 7 seals, or the sealing of God's people, there was at the same time there was an interlude with between the 6th and the 7th trumpet as well. The little stroll measuring the temple. Okay, sorry. The little stroll measuring the temple of the measuring the little stroll, the measuring of the temple, and the 2 witnesses, which is between 7 and 6. The 7th seal there was a silence in heaven as judgment continued. The 7th trumpet, or the 3rd woe, showed a time that arise for judgment, and this is important here, for judgment to happen on the people who prosecuted God's people, or reward for God's people. What do I mean by that? The seals and the trumpet. The seven seals focus on God's people and their journey towards victory, while the 7th trumpet focuses on the enemy of God's people and their divine preliminary judgment on the divine preliminary judgment on them. Every time I think about this, I start thinking about, one of Newton's law that says, to every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. So a very big part of this is these things were happening simultaneously. What it meant was God's people were getting from a good situation that went from good to great, while the judgment was being poured out on the people, the enemies of God's people, from a situation that's from bad to worse. So the seals, as the seals were broken, God's people saw more rewards. But as the trumpet was blown, the enemy of God's people the judgment got even more intense. So the proof that it was in fact judgment and not reward for the enemies of God can be found in Revelation 8, verse 5, that says, "And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it, and there were voices and thundering and lightning and an earthquake." Does it sound familiar to anybody? Now, there's something that's very familiar with this. Do you remember what happened when the Christ was resurrected? It was the same thing: thunder, lightning, and an earthquake. The tool seemed to have played out itself again. That's because this is one of the mechanisms that is being used to proclaim it. Okay, the first trumpet. Revelation 8 verse 7 says, "The first angel sounded, hail and fire followed, mingled with blood. And they were thrown on the earth, and a third of the trees were burnt up, and all the green grasses were burnt up." So, if you notice, I highlighted two very important words there in red. The words are hail and fire. This is the same two words that we just saw before. So when you're thinking about that, it's evident that there's judgment going on. There's some punishment going on. So what does the word tree mean? The word tree here is used to proclaim the people of God. Back, if you check the Bible, even from both the Old Testament and the New Testament, you'll see where Christ referred to the church, these people, as a tree. He even went as far as to talk about the axe being placed in the root of the tree. So it's showing that there is going to be a time when God people are going to be cut down, or attempted to be cut down. So, that was the most important. Those are the most important things to understand about the first trumpet. Now, the second trumpet. Oh, let's go back for a moment. So, the first trumpet, the time that it happened was, what time period are we talking about? What symbol, where was the fulfillment in this? The fulfillment in this came about with the destruction of Jerusalem. If you follow. So God, in the Bible, see if I can go back. Okay. Right here. Says right there where it says, and the first angel sounded, hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth, and a third of the tree were burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. Do you see where that is talking about the fall of Jerusalem, of God's people? The people who God chose for his own, who rejected him. All right, now the second trumpet, it goes, verse 8 says, "And the second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was cast in the sea, and a third of the sea became blood." Let's pause there for a moment. Once again, we see the word. What's the key words we see there? Fire. And we see something else, blood, the sea becoming blood. So once again, you're seeing punishment and judgment being played out. So you see the theme from the first one to the second one, where you're seeing punishment. A key word here is the word mountain. Mountain in the Bible is used to symbolize kingdoms are great nations. So what kingdom or nations could it be talking about at this point? If we look back, the first persons who started the persecution of God's people was the Jews when they rejected Christ. They rejected Christ and they started persecuting God's people. Then the second one that started almost immediately after that was the Romans. So this time period, what happened was the emperors in Rome started making declarations to have God's people punished and killed for following him, for following the true words of Christ. So the mountain here, there is a great mountain burning with fire, was talking about the destruction of Rome. On to the third one. The third trumpet, and the third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star like a torch, and a great star burning like a torch fell from the heaven, and it fell upon a third of the river and upon the springs of the water. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And a third of the water became wormwood, and many people died from the water because they were made bitter. Wow. This sounds to me like something from a sci-fi movie when I'm thinking about it. So when you look at it once again, we're seeing the same theme. Where the punishment is being played out. You're seeing burning like a torch, right? But a very important thing here is the term wormwood. What is it? What could wormwood be? Well, wormwood is actually, you can find it in Deuteronomy as well, where this word is used to represent something that is bitter. What this is talking about is when, in this case, it is referring to when you talk about the water and the spring, Christ has referred to us the Christianity. It's true Christianity in its natural form, how Jesus proclaimed it to be, is referred to as water, right? Now, wormwood here is talking about the Christians who then deviated or moved away, turned their back from Christ and the true religion and the true form of Christianity, where they were persecuting other Christians. So now you have Christians persecuting other Christians, which gave rise to the papal Rome. Are we following? Are we still here? Okay. So it gave way to papal Rome, and this continued. So now you're seeing where Rome actually was destroyed and papal Rome came in play. And then it was also, the people have gotten so dark that they are now persecuting Christians. So what happened after that? The fourth trumpet was sounded, and the fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sea, a third of the sun, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars were stricken, so that a third of them became darkened, and the day did not brighten for a third of it, and the night likewise. So it's basically saying here that we started out showing where the first trumpet, they rejected Christ, started persecuting the Christians. Then the Roman Empire came in and started persecuting Christians as well. And both of those were judged and destroyed. Then it came a time where Christian was now persecuting Christians. So it eventually got so bad that it was referred to as the dark days. The dark days, because now these Christians had been so far removed from Christ that they could not kindle with the word anymore. They were persecuting, killing the true Christians. So that's what this is really talking about right here. It's interesting to see how it's going to play out as the trumpets continue to blow. So remember, we had talked about in the very first slide, we spoke about the seven trumpets and the seven seals being divided into subsets, into two groups, one of 4 and one of 3. So we just completed the first 4 trumpets. And what did we say? The first one, the fulfillment of it was Jerusalem, judgment on Jerusalem, where Jerusalem fell in a terrible siege, and its destruction in 70 AD. Then the second one was the fall of Rome. Announces that the fall of Rome, that the great empire that persecuted the Christians and later helped to combine the pagan with Christianity, had fallen. Then the third one, which is the fall of the Christian church, or the rise of papal Rome, became a persecutor. So now papal Rome was persecuting people, the people of God. And then the fourth trumpet, which was the dark Middle Ages, people could no longer read the Bible. They had no access to the light, the Word of God. Can you imagine living in that time? And we take it for granted, right? We have the opportunity to feast on God's Word, and we take it for granted. So that leads us to the fifth, which is the first of the next set of 3s, right? So the fifth trumpet, and we're going to do a lot of reading here. And I looked, and I heard a vulture flying in mid-heaven, saying with a loud voice, "Woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, because of the rest of the trumpet sounds, the 3 angels who are about to sound." Verse 13 goes, and I looked and I heard. Oh, sorry, that's what I just read. Okay. Chapter 9, verse 1 says, and the 5th angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star falling from heaven to earth, and the key of the pits of the abyss was given to him, and he opened the pit of the abyss, and smoke came up from the abyss, like smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air became darkened by the smoke of the abyss. And a locust came out of the smoke on the earth, and power was given to them. And locusts came out of the smoke on the earth, and power was given to them, as scorpions of the earth have the power. And it was said to them not to hurt the grass, okay, God's people, of the earth, nor the green things, nor any green things, nor any tree, God's people, except the men who do not have the seal of God upon their forehead. And it was given to them to kill them, it was given to them not to kill them, but that they should torment for 5 months. They should be tormented for 5 months, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when it stings a person. And those days, people will seek death, and they will in no way find it. And they will long to die, and death will flee them. Wow. I'm going to go back to it. We're going to have to go back to that. Can you imagine, if you have ever been stung by a bee, you know how painful it is. If you have ever been bitten by a scorpion, can you imagine being bitten or stung by something that looks similar to that? When I looked at the picture, when I was doing the research and I found it, I read every single line in the description, and the artist did a remarkable job. So, you're in pain and suffering, and you're begging for death to come, but no death. That was the only relief you can think of, but no death. Wow, that's punishment. And the appearance of the locust was similar to horse prepared for battle. And upon their head were a crown of gold, and their faces were like human faces. And they had hair, and their hair, they had hair as the hair of woman, and their teeth were as of lion. Wow. And they had breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wing was the sound of chariots, of many horses running into battle. And they had tails like scorpion, and stings, and authority in their tails was to torment people for 5 months. You can see the violence, the physical violence that's going to come from this, the physical torment. So, very important thing. Let's go back to the very first part when it says, "And I saw a star fell on the earth, and the key of the pit of the abyss." So, what is the abyss? The abyss is where the devil lives, right? So obviously these are demonic beasts, that's demonic creatures that's coming from the abyss to torment those. But even more interestingly, I want you to look at this. God declared that they did not have any authority to harm his people, to kill his people. However, here you have these demonic creatures that were being punished and being killed by creatures from Satan's abyss. So these people who persecuted the church, Christ's church, were being punished by the person who they served. If you have a master like that, you don't need an enemy, right? Okay, we stopped off here. They have a king over them, the angel of the abyss, whose name is Abaddon, whose Hebrew name is Abaddon, and Greek name is Apollyon. The first woe has passed. Behold, 2 woes are coming after these things. Wow. If that's just the first war, and they're begging for death already, and it's not coming. So we identified with this that there's going to be a lot of physical violence, right? So now let's look what happens in the sixth one, which is chapter 9, verse 13. And it says, and the sixth angel sounded his trumpet, and I heard a voice from the horn of the golden altar, which is before God, saying, the sixth angel saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, release the four angels who are bound at the great river of Euphrates. I always have problem pronouncing that word. And the four angels, the one who were prepared for the hour and the day and the month and the year, were released, and they might kill a third of humankind. A third of humankind. And the number of the army of horsemen were 200 million. I heard the number of them. What did John do? So you remember Pastor explained that there are two things that happen in Revelation, that John sees or John hears. So this, I think John explicitly told you that he heard this number. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and those sitting upon them, having breastplate of fire, and jacinth and sulfur, and the head of the horses, and the horses were as head of lion, and out of their mouth were coming fire, smoke, and sulfur. Does that look like it? That giant definitely looks like it to me. But once again, we see here fire, smoke, punishment again. From these three plagues were killed a third of mankind. From the fire and the smoke and the sulfur coming out of their mouth. For the authority of these horses is in their mouth, and their tails. For their tails are like snakes, having heads, and with them they cause harm. I'm going to pause here for a moment. So, in the fifth one, we saw where it was talking about violence, right? But here, we're seeing where another word for authority would be power, right? So the previous one, they had the power to sting and punish like a scorpion of the hurt, which is a physical injury, a physical punishment. Here, it says that the punishment was coming out of their mouth. Because, to use a good word that we recently hear, what they were doing here is using alternative facts, right? Or deception. Because if you go back and you notice again what they're talking about, the tail is a snake, which means it carries with it deception, deceit, which it is using deception to separate people from God, to destroy the people of God. And the rest of the people, the ones who were not killed by stone and of wood, were killed by stone and of wood, which can neither see nor hear or walk. And they did not repent of their murders and of their sorceries, or their fornication, or their theft. And, sorry, that was the seventh. So, we are seeing here where punishment has been becoming even more dangerous or more intense as we move from the blowing of the first trumpet to the blowing of the sixth. Each one has become more intense. And if you think about it, when you look at it in parallel with the seven seals, you realize exactly what I'm saying, that there's for every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. So as their punishment became more intense, God's people were rewarded even greater. I don't know about you, but I know which side I want to be on. And so the sixth trumpet was for what the period in which this was used, was the fulfillment of this was when you with the what's that religion that Islamic, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. The Islamic religion started taking over more of the land of God's people. They started destroying actually the church that was going against that was persecuting the people of God. They started being persecuted by the Islamic movement. And they started losing ground, which was kind of interesting. All right, so the seventh and the final trumpet. And the seventh angel sounded his trumpet, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, "The kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he will reign until tomorrow." No. And he will reign forever and ever. So here, to put it simple, it is done. And this is the summary of what the seventh trumpet is about. I would implore each and every one of you to dig deeper, to read it and really go in depth, because there's so much in it for us as a church to learn from. Next week, I'm going to go through, if you notice, I did not touch the interlude. The interlude needed a time space for itself. So next week, we'll wrap up the seventh trumpet by focusing on the interlude. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.